Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled you can join us today. If you liked our opening music, it's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms. If you're new to our show, Alzheimer Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. We like to talk with people all around the world and hear their stories. What are their thoughts? What are they doing to make the world a better place when it comes to dementia? So maybe, just maybe, you can be our next guest. Feel free to reach out to me at radio@alzheimerspeaks.com. Now, before I introduce our guest today, I always like to do a couple of shout outs. So one, I want to just make sure that people know that Maud's Ventures is still taking applications for seed money. So if you have an idea or a concept, they have three major categories they're looking at, but you can check them out at maudsventures.org, and maybe you'll get $50,000 to $100,000 to start your project. I also want to mention that Alzheimer Speaks has finally launched our new website. So please check it out, alzheimerspeaks.com. We have a page specifically for free resources, and you will find so much great information there, as well as information on events and programs and consulting and branding. So again, pass the word, alzheimerspeaks.com. Check it out. There's share buttons. We'd love to have you follow us as well. And if you like camping, the Memory Camp at Moon Beach is going to be open for people with dementia and their families. This has been a really wonderful, wonderful program. It is August 15th through the 18th. And to register, you can call 715-479-8255. We're going to hear from the Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner, and we will be right back.
I love the footbar walker, and let me tell you why. It is the option for my toolbox that I've been waiting for. Let's be honest, there are some clients who, despite our best rehab efforts, just aren't able to return to performing a sit-to-stand transfer on their own. Now I can offer my caregivers an easier, safer option that doesn't involve hoisting their loved one up from a sitting position. I don't recommend this walker for all of my clients, but I do recommend this walker for those caregivers looking for an easier, safer option with transfers. I would also encourage other therapists to add this walker to their toolbox. It's kind of like having my own mobile parallel bars for the client to pull up on. Whether it's a family caregiver at home helping a loved one with Parkinson's or dementia, CNAs in a long-term care facility assisting their patients, or therapists adapting to client and caregiver-specific needs, we now have a very safe and effective option to offer in the footbar walker. Check this product out at thefootbarwalker.com. That's it for today from Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Have a great day, and don't forget, if you can't do it, adapt it.
Okay, we are back, and I am thrilled to introduce you to our guests today who are all overseas again. We are going to be talking about cultural activities and how to create social inclusion by tapping into that. And we have two experts with us today. Olivier Constant, who holds his master's degree in social science with a specialization in medical sociology and a master's in film studies and visual culture as well. And for almost 10 years now, he has been responsible for the communication policy of the Flanders Centre of Expertise on Dementia. And the center itself has officially partnered with organizations like the Flemish Government, which is in Belgium, that works and spreads research, good practices, and clear communication tools about caring for people with any type of dementia. And also with him today is Elena de Ru. And she is an engaging and very interesting speaker. And she focuses on the theme of dementia as well. Not only is she very active in the field, she founded and is leading an organization where students and individuals with young onset do meaningful activities together. And this they do in various cities in Belgium. And Elena and her cousin Elaine Lassett from California wrote a book called Courage for the Caregiver. So I'm really excited to have both of them with us today. Well, listen, I am so excited to have the two of you with us. I appreciate the time difference and coordinating this so we can get this done. I think it's so important that people hear what's going on around the world, and you two are doing some pretty fabulous work. So Oliver and Elena, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. Appreciate it. Now, I always start out every show by asking if people have been personally touched by dementia in their own family and circle of friends. And so, Oliver, I'm going to let you go first with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, for me personally, I've been touched with Alzheimer's within my family, but it's really like years ago, and it was actually way before I started working for the organization, the Flemish Expertise Center on Dementia. And to be honest, for me, in my memory, it was really like a pretty heavy experience because we never spoke about the word Alzheimer's in our family. It was really like a taboo, and the way it was with my grandmother that she was treated back then, but it's really like quite a long time ago, was not how it should be. But for me, that was really also like a kind of accelerator to join the Expertise Center for an awareness raising campaign. I've been working here now for 10 years, just to also broaden the picture of dementia. I mean, obviously there's lots of negative things on dementia, but there's also another story, and I had a chance to really know the other story apart from my personal experience during the years that I worked for the Expertise Center. But to come back to my personal experience, yes, but it wasn't even called dementia or Alzheimer's then. It was we didn't really know what was going on back then. But I guess that's lots of due to the taboo that was way more heavy back then. I talk about 15 years ago than it is now. So.
Yeah, I had that same experience with a great aunt. And back then they just said, well, you know, it's aging. She's going senile. This is what happens when you get old. And it, like you said, it didn't really have a name. It was just a natural flow is kind of how it was described to me. I know.
Yeah, and then just to add one more thing, I mean, back then my grandmother got lots of medication, and that was also one of the reasons why she deteriorated. So it's really like, well, not really a good experience, but to be honest, you also have to take the learning points from it. And even up until today, like that personal experience, and I guess that will be recognizable for people all across the world. Once you have been touched by a dementia in one way or another, it really sticks with you, and it can be also an accelerator to move forward in another way. And that's for me like also like my drive in my day-to-day job for the Expertise Center.
Yeah, it's interesting how many people are personally touched and then step into this space. Elena, how about you?
My husband had dementia for countless years. I really cannot recall how long it was, but I think the first signals, you know, in retrospect, when I look back, the early signals started in 95. So that is quite a long time. And he passed just before COVID started. And all the time, I cared for him at home. He always stayed at home till his last day. And halfway the process, I wanted to give meaning to our new situation. So I started to become active in the field of dementia. And as Olivier always says, I'm not active, I'm hyperactive. So every single day, my life is organized around projects for dementia.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you both for your work. I'm going to start out, Oliver, with you. If you can tell us the mission of your project for dementia cultural mediation, and what does that mean, and what do you do?
Well, maybe if it's helpful, I'll briefly introduce the organization for which I work, like for the viewers. So I've been active for 10 years for the Flanders Expertise Center on Dementia, and we are located in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. As you know, we're a pretty complicated country. And what we do as an organization, we're actually the official partner of the Flemish Government to develop and also roll out a dementia strategy. So last year we released a new dementia strategy, and as an organization, actually our main mission is to build bridges between what's happening in the academic world in science and daily care practice. And when I say building bridges, I mean it in both ways. So not only translating what happens in science to the daily care practice, but mainly being proactive. So really like detecting the needs of people with dementia, of informal caregivers, of healthcare professionals, and bringing them up proactively to science, but also to the policy level. So, and my main mission within our organization is awareness raising on dementia, and also the coordination of our working group of people with dementia. And a third big pillar is the whole dementia-friendly community work. And I think the project Dementia and Cultural Mediation can be located like in between those three areas where I'm active in, because what we try to do in the project is really look at the beneficial effect of arts and culture on people with dementia, but also on informal caregivers. I think in lots of areas, not only in Europe, but across the world, there are so many beautiful projects in this field. But the big question is we have to share the good practices, and we have to make them more sustainable. And especially those two pillars are like the main focus of the project, Dementia in Cultural Mediation. And what's really important for us as an organization, but for all the partners within the project, is like the structural involvement of informal caregivers as the quality check throughout the whole project cycle. And obviously that's also the reason why Elena was part of the project reference group from the start to finish. And I think she's also the right person to look back at the journey later on.
Well, I love your mission. I got into this space in 2009 as a frustrated daughter going, there's got to be more people like our family. There's got to be way more support out there than anybody knows. And we've got to raise everybody's voice and be inclusive. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. I've also always really believed in the social connection side of making life better, not only for the person with dementia, but for the care partner as well. And you're, bridging the science to the daily care, I think is a beautiful mission, because sometimes I think our professionals talk over people's heads. They're using words they don't understand and acronyms we don't know about. And again, they're not necessarily telling us how do I live graciously on a day-to-day basis with this disease. You're telling me processes, you're giving me tasks of how it progresses, but you're really not helping me that much in my day-to-day life. And, that's the struggle I've heard from families, and the benefits of this arts and culture and the social side is just so beneficial. You hear it over and over again from not only people living with dementia, but their care partners on what a difference those connections are making. So, Elena, anything that you want to add about the organization?
Well, I don't know if I can already speak, but one of the things that are so important to me is during the process we lived in at home, I had a slogan, living well with dementia at home, or coping well with dementia at home. But over the years, I lost connection every now and then. Mm-hmm. And that's what made it so hard. And one of the things I think cultural mediation can help is to reconnect again. Mm-hmm. To what you are doing, that there's the reception, and that you can connect by using art and other things in cultural mediation. And it works so wonderfully well.
You know, I would like to invite you guys. I just started something new that I'm doing, and I only do it quarterly. But if this would be applicable and you guys would want to participate, I'd love to coordinate with you. But I actually am interviewing quarterly people around the world with dementia, and they're displaying their art. And they're showing all different types of art that they're doing, what they get out of it, how it makes them feel. And it's been really amazing and just beautiful. The variety of things that they're doing is just absolutely incredible. So please keep that in mind.
That is wonderful. And you know what I discovered, that many people who seem to not like to talk anymore, all of a sudden start talking again, and happily so.
Yeah, it's kind of like that music piece. Everyone's kind of accepted that music can kind of lighten up the brain, but all forms of art, I think, can do that. And I'm not a researcher. I'm just standing back as a person from what I see and experience and hear there. Oliver, let's talk about, you know, how did the whole realization of your group come to be? I mean, we all get these little ideas, but how did you make it actually happen?
Well, that's a long story. No, well, to cut a long story short, I mean, we've been like the origins of the project were through the lead partner, which was Odense Libraries, and they're like the library situated in the Danish capital of Odense, and so we started like a partnership with them, and obviously then we developed not only like the whole project outline, but also involved like the other partners. And maybe it's interesting just to situate the other partners in the project. So apart from us and the library from Odense, we also involved the University of Brussels, which is the other partner in Belgium. We also involved the Institute of Gerontology in San Sebastian in Spain. And then last organization within the project consortium was a Dutch organization called Healthy Aging Network Northern Netherlands. Phew. A long name, but I think the big benefit of this kind of partnership was like the complementarity between the partners. So we had like an academic partner. We are more related to the daily care practice, and you had the Gerontological Institute. But one of the key aims or ambitions during like the development of the project was also the involvement of the end users. So that's why, apart from a project group, we also had like, obviously also a steering group, but also a reference group. And I think the reference group was really like an important pillar within this project, because they were really like the quality check throughout all that was developed within the 2.5 years of the project. And they also had to be like, or they had to build bridges to the end users. And that's obviously also why Elena, based on her experience, was part of this reference group.
Well, and again, I think that's so important. You're bringing all those pieces together, because a lot of times I think we put these packages together and we think we know what they need, and then we put it out there and go, well, why isn't it working? Well, why didn't you ask before you pushed it out, for feedback and test it and have people be part of that? I mean, to me, as a layperson, that's just common sense, but I can't believe how many years so many things have been pushed out that have never been tested, never asked for input. And
that is so true.
Yeah. And so elevating that voice and really coming to a true partnership it's very different than just asking for feedback, because sometimes when you ask for feedback, you're like, well, I'll take that or I won't take that. But when there's a true partnership, you're really listening, and you're out of that. I don't know, you step into a different level of partnership where it's okay to reorganize and redevelop, to bring it to the level that you really wanted it to be, versus I think so often we've got a deadline and it's got to get pushed out. It's got to get pushed out right now. And I'm of the belief, and I don't know if you guys are, but I'm of the belief it's never, ever going to be perfect. And the moment we think it is, right, that's when we stop serving people. And so we should always be listening with that. Elena, do you have some comments?
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, can I add to that, Lori?
Please.
In the past, my husband and I were often asked to come for a quality check for things that were developed we call it the think tank. And at the final stage, you were invited to come. And if we had some comments or say, hey, I don't think you make a real connection, they got angry because they worked years on end and it was so much money involved. And when we didn't just applaud or had some things to say about it, they got angry with us. And I think it's so important that before you start working, that you involve the people in the target group themselves.
Oh, I agree. I refer to it as the experts are peeking in the window, guessing what's going on in the house when we could just knock on the door and ask, and find out. And like you said, when you start in the beginning, it just makes it so much easier, and then no one's offended. But I think part of what I see here in the US anyways is this kind of closed box mentality. This is the way we've always done it. This is the structure we approach to projects. And the creativity has just gotten smushed down. And there's so many great ideas and different approaches that I think can really enhance things. Oliver, do you see that over there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the benefits of this kind of, or within this field of project is arts and culture. Obviously, it's not rocket science. And I think it's really like a rich field, not only to tailor projects to people in different stages of dementia, but also to involve people with dementia, informal caregivers from start to finish in a project. And actually, that's also what we've tried to do. Apart from Elena, who was part of the reference group, we also try to involve our Flemish working group of people with dementia. And I was just thinking on one of our members, Chris, who is part of our working group. Actually, he worked for years as an arts history teacher. And he once wrote me a quote, and I think his quote, and I'm gonna try to translate it from Dutch to English, really sums up what this kind of value is for this project. He wrote me the following after his dementia diagnosis. He wrote me I asked him, what is the value of arts and culture for someone with dementia? And he said, as an art historian, teacher, and as an art lover, arts and culture are an integral part of my life. Dementia doesn't change the essence of who I am, what I like, and what gives my life meaning. In fact, every person is an artist and creatively shapes his or her own life. Art can be healing, and it helps us to give things a place. Actually, life itself is one big process of shaping and sculpting. And I think this quote from Chris, who lives with dementia, really also sums up the mission we had at the start of this project. It was really for us a first step, exploring the value, the good practices that are available, and now a next step could be making them or transferring them to other areas. And obviously that's why we're also happy to introduce the project for your audience.
I love that quote. I think it's right on, and I think it's so overlooked. I think so often when there's a medical diagnosis, we think it has to be a medical, or academic fix instead of something that's already in our life that brings us joy and purpose. Right. And that joy and purpose and engagement, that's what fills our heart. That's what makes us want to live. And again, I'm just kind of surprised for how long that piece has been out of the equation. And it's so fun to see that really being pulled in, and then for even scientific research to back that up, going, yeah, this is a really, really powerful modality that makes a difference in people's lives.
Right. Lori, I so much would like dementia to push it away from the medical direction and push it in the direction of the quality of life.
Oh, agree. I think that's something we need to teach in our schools, the talk of quality of life and what does that mean to us, period, because it's such a foreign piece. And people I know here in the US, they don't really address that until it's okay, let's do your healthcare directives. And then they're like, I don't want to talk about that because you're talking about end of life. But it's like, it's way bigger than that. It's thinking about what brings you pleasure on a day-to-day basis. And it doesn't have to be big, flashy stuff. Sometimes it's just sitting quietly and relaxing. We have a man over here who's been living with dementia, gosh, close to 20 years now. His name is Harry Urban, and he has a Facebook group called Forget Me Not. And one of my favorite quotes of Harry is, I like to relax before I got dementia. I still do. You don't have to keep me busy all the time. But I think those busy tasks that we all are told that we should do give us comfort, like we're doing something instead of building on our relationships. We tend to, and I know I did with my mom's disease for 30 years in the beginning, I tended to give over my relationship and get really task oriented. And I had all this busyness. And then when I finally realized to let go of that and just be present with her, everything changed. Everything became richer, and almost on a spiritual level with that. So let's talk a little bit about the journey in terms of, can you give us, Oliver, some examples of culture and cultural activities that you're elevating? And because I think sometimes people think, oh, okay, that's a good idea. And then they walk away and go, well, what the heck did that really mean? How do I really put that into practice? And one of the things I like to do with Alzheimer's Speaks is to really get people's mission and work out there so people understand it, because I think so much of what we do can be duplicated in other areas. And every community is a little bit different. So if you can expound on that, that would be wonderful.
Well, I think you have two kinds of journeys. The one journey is the project itself. Obviously, like when we started at the end of 2019, we had like a startup meeting in Odense in Denmark, and then there was a certain virus, obviously, which stopped every live activity. And as you can imagine, like for arts and culture, which are really like located like in the moment, and you have to experience it, it was really like, and I think Elena will agree on this, a big challenge to exchange like these ideas and good practices online. But nevertheless, we managed to move forward and exchange like within the whole project like 30 good practices. So 6 projects from each partner, and maybe it's interesting just to give some examples. I guess the reference from the website will also be added to the YouTube video, so everybody can find all the 30 projects on the website. But for instance, from Flanders, we introduced like a theater project, which was made by people with young onset dementia. And I think that's really a good example of the philosophy behind the project. I mean, we try to look through the perspective of people with dementia themselves and not through our own perspective. And that's also like the message like this kind of theater plays tries to bring across. So that's one example. Another example is like, for instance, like a painting workshop who is run in a residential care center here in Flanders. There were contact choirs involved. So it's really like we had a poetry project. So it's really like a big variety, not only of artistic expressions, but also, and I think that's important to point out, for the different stages of dementia. I mean, when people can't express themselves verbally anymore, art and culture offers so many opportunities to still get in touch with people. And we tried to also incorporate this kind of projects that focus more on the non-verbal communication as well. So we try not only to bring a variety of artistic expressions, but also communication-wise, like tailor it to the different stages of dementia. Because in the end, it's all about inclusion within this kind of project, and you have to stay true to the philosophy. So that's why we also try to focus on those non-verbal communication. And maybe also it's important to add that apart from all the video introductions that people can find on the website, we also developed detailed project sheets. And you were talking about transferability, duplication, and the aim of these project sheets is people can pick and choose. Actually, I mean, I can imagine that a project that works in Antwerp will be different in your area, and will be different again when you introduce it in Eastern Europe or whatsoever. But I guess people can find ideas and inspiration, and just pick and choose maybe some elements, and start maybe at a smaller level, and then elaborate further on that. So actually we tried also to incorporate like this kind of gradual steps to move forward, and again, all the project sheets are freely available on the website, so I guess that's also interesting to add.
Well, and that's wonderful. I think, over here, so often people are, this is my stuff and I don't want anybody duplicating it, and what I found is throughout the world, so many other countries, I mean, are so willing to share. And I think that is so valuable. And even when I talk with people on this, they're like, well, we have everything we need locally. And I'm like, we wouldn't have dementia friendly communities, and we wouldn't have memory cafes if we weren't talking with people out of our country, because those were not our concepts. And they're like shocked, because it's almost like we've been told we are the creator of all over here. And it's like, we're not, none of us are. And we all have things to learn, and new stuff is coming online constantly. When I went on your website, I was just shocked at the amount of detail and the thought that went into not just the education, but the shareability. And I'm a big believer in sharing and inspiring others. When we see other people doing things, it makes us think, well, maybe I could do that, or maybe we could start something like that. And, it might look a little bit different, but it should. You have a different community, you have a different need. Everything shouldn't be just this, bed in a bag type thing where, you're going to spread it out and it's all going to look the same. That's pretty boring.
Yeah, I think also, if I just can add that, I mean, when we talk about this kind of project journey of the different good practices, I think it's important to have like an open perspective. And I mean by that it's not only about the success factors of a project. It's not like, hooray, our project is fantastic. We also have to stay critical. And that's one of the elements that we try also to take into account when we talk about the different projects. You have like opportunities and you have barriers. And I think people can also learn a lot from the barriers or the things that we came across to. And that's why we try to be also open about it also on the project website, because maybe we'll talk a little bit later on the lessons learned of the project. But it's not that everything was perfect, far from perfect, but it's more like, as I told earlier, like a first step. And we talk openly also about these barriers, opportunities at the different levels. And I think that's also really important for people in other countries.
And Laurie, I would like to add something on what you said before. That is, my husband and I traveled a lot for dementia all over the world. So Olivier travels for dementia, but we did also. And we participated in numerous programs. And sometimes we didn't have a language in common. But even so, I knew when something was good, when it moved us, and when my husband was touched, and when he was involved, even without the same language. And that is so important. That's how I looked at the programs. I looked at, is there a connection? Am I sure that there's reception from the target group? Is it affordable? Is it duplicable? Because we in Europe, not every country has the same standard, the level of, how do you say that, what you can spend in your life. So we also have some more poor countries. And were there things that would be good for them? Can they duplicate this? And is it good for them? Will that touch their people? And in the United Kingdom, there's a lot of research about effects on people with dementia. So they have good projects and good research on modern culture and object handling. So both really modern culture, sculptures, and very old objects are really good, and it works in every country. We did a tryout in many countries. So it's not about it's being for the United States, or it's not being for Europe, but it's applicable for many countries.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And I think that was a good point that you brought up about language and stuff too, because I think one of the things that people are taught, if they want to learn it or not, but to tap into those nonverbal communications, with dementia, and realizing we communicate, more so with our nonverbals than we do words, but we seem to elevate our need for words from people with
Mm-hmm.
dementia, and which puts a lot of pressure and stress and increases their symptoms. And I mean, we can really be problematic in in that point. And when we can just look at them as a whole person, it just makes everything so different.
I really, it would be so interesting if we could have shown it, because the modern art project, that was also part of it. The modern art itself doesn't speak, but all the people involved started speaking
Yep.
because the guides were so wonderful.
Oh, that's nice. I know we have several museums that do tours and things too, and people they adore that. I mean, one, it's just the ability to go out and be normal, do something kind of normal that they used to do, and it doesn't feel different. And
You know what? A place where you are welcome again, because with dementia, so often you are not that welcome anymore in your old group of friends, or in the old structures you were at. But then all of a sudden you have a reason to dress up again, to go to the hairdresser and go to a nice place and be with peers. People are in the same situation. You are either a caregiver or somebody with dementia, but you are in the same situation, and that is wonderful. That works so well.
Yeah, we have a group in Colorado, Dementia Together, and they worked with the symphony, and they would do a little kind of pre-test just on mood when they came and then when they left, and the results were just amazing. And they found that moods even elevated as time went on when they continued to come, because they would be excited to come back again to the program. True. But when they left, and she says some of them just didn't want to leave. They just wanted to sit around and talk and talk and talk and talk, because they were so engaged. Some of this stuff is so simple to be able to do and to coordinate, but it takes somebody kind of with that vision and that persistence, to pull it together. But boy, the joy and the calmness, feeling of belonging is huge.
It's like medication, but differently, but it has an effect and a side effect and an after effect, because when you get home, you're still in that good mood. The emphasis is not on dementia, but it's about having fun and being together. And it has some hours of effect, and sometimes the next week they are already looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's got that ripple effect. So it's not just the person with dementia, but it's their loved ones and
right,
and everybody around them. Where with the medication, I don't even think we're, if it works, we don't, when that does happen, people aren't really attributing it to anything. But this is an actual event. And I think it gives people a sense of control and comfort. And again, just being able to live graciously, to be able to enjoy life. And it's a subtle thing, but it's so heartfelt.
In our private life, it replaced medication. When I started to use culture and music, I stopped medication and I never gave it again the last 10 years.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the beneficial effects, like one of the, at the start, I talked about the sustainability of this kind of projects, and that's really like still a big challenge. There are so many good practices, and we can talk for hours about the beneficial effects of different kind of project. But the thing is, obviously, when you want to make something sustainable, people want to try to quantify the effects in one way or another, and maybe it's also interesting to point out that we, at the end of this project, we developed a publication, and one of the key elements of the publication is not only like kind of state of the art within research of different artistic forms, but also what are the opportunities and the barriers of like quantifying the effects, because you can try to quantify everything, but as you know, it's not that easy with this kind of project. But on the other hand, it's like really like almost a must to make them sustainable. So I think that's really like a balance you have to find, and we try to address that also in the final publication of this project, which is again free for download also in English on the website. So maybe that's also interesting to take a look at after this conversation.
Oh, definitely. Well, and I think when it comes to research, sometimes we think it has to be so complicated, but I think, and again, I don't know if this happens over there, but like here you go in and they might do some screening tests and they're just asking you 1 to 10, how do you feel? I mean, we can do stuff like that, can show meaning for both the person with dementia and their care partner, to see the difference and really, and validate that without blood work, or without, having to do a PET scan to see if their brains lighten up a little. It doesn't have to be that complicated if we just listen to people and really take that in stride. And I mean, I would love to see where we get to the point where a prescription could be written for cultural activities, instead of it always has to be a pill.
Do you know that there are doctors in England who do that for overweight people? Mm-hmm. They give them a prescription that's a year pass for a largest museum, so they have to walk.
Oh, interesting. We haven't gotten that far with thinking past pharma. I don't think that to my knowledge here in the U.S. So
they're saying, rather than the 10% of probably less people that have effect from the medication for Alzheimer's, I would love to see doctors or neurologists sending them away so you don't ever have to come back again. But this is a forever prescription. Participate in cultural mediations. Go participate in the choir, in music.
Wouldn't that be cool? Well, and you don't have to worry about side effects, with other medications and different things too. The health benefits are in such a wide array, but we're kind of in this pattern of, well, we've always done it this way. And to me, the world is so upside down right now. It's like, we're shaking the brown paper bag going, okay, everything's falling out and we're going to have to repack this because there's not one entity, I don't think, that's working smoothly, from government to education to religion to whatever. I mean, everything is just kind of gone cray-cray. And, right now would be an ideal time to repack, reanalyze, and just rethink of how and why we're delivering services and get rid of that. But we've always done it this way, Yeah,
and I think not only the thing like we've always done it this way, but I think one of the aims of this kind of projects, or one of the side effects, could be like really like the change in perspective. I mean, in care, we always think based on the best intentions, like we have a problem and we're going to try to find a solution. But Elena knows it better than me. With dementia, it doesn't work that way. And I think these kind of projects also challenge us like to alter the perspective, but that's like a change in attitude. And I guess this takes time, but we hope also through this kind of project that we can have a little bit of effect on that change of attitude, because I think that's really like a must when you really want to enter the world of people with dementia and look through their perspective.
One of my goals with Alzheimer's Speaks, my tagline is to shift care from crisis to comfort. And it's a real simple thing to do, and it doesn't have to be real complicated. And why we're not including the families who know the person the best in that equation has always flabbergasted me. And asking them, what do they like? What, instead of how do we fix it, how do we support it? And so much of our fixes sometimes can add stress that can actually increase symptoms for people and for families, for all the hoops and stuff that they have to jump through versus, doing this type of engagement where they can also be supported with others who are like-minded and understand and who are compassionate and kind. I mean, people with dementia want the same thing the rest of us do. They want to fit in. They want to have purpose. They want to belong. That has to come up to the top of the equation of how are we going to serve? And I think it's really been pushed down to the bottom. And I think we are bubbling that back up to the top. But, like Oliver said, it's kind of a slow process. It doesn't just happen. overnight, but there's more and more voices and organizations that are speaking out and feeling more comfortable talking about this. And I think that that's just so critical.
Also, and maybe that's also one of the lessons learned at the end of this project. I think it's always like a challenge to find the right balance between like stimulating the autonomy of the person in every stage of dementia, also in the later stages, and also like always accepting the limitations of each person. And I think this kind of project, like in arts and culture, can help us to find that balance. And I mean, in daily care, that's really like a challenge because people have the pressure of time and money and so on and so on. But I think what I've learned from people with dementia during the 10 years that I work at the Expertise Center, that's so important for them. And not only that, but also not being or not patronizing. So really like respecting their own voice and their own experience. And like Elena said earlier in the interview, involving them from the start. And these are for me like really like lessons learned also from this project. And when there will be maybe a next step, I think we have to really like expand the involvement of the end users. We try to do it within this project, but I think it can be more structurally. And I guess Elena will agree with me.
Definitely. You know what, when what you said is true. Rather than putting people in the waiting room for the doctor, we should involve them. I know when dementia enters your life, it's like a small earthquake, but we should help people and invite them and come out of your crying zone and enter the groups where you can have fun and enjoy life, but because there are many good years ahead of you. We always focus on the last stage in the media, but we should focus on all the years that are still ahead of you, where you can travel, where you can participate in the cultural activities, where you have fun. And for me personally, I think it's not only the effect on the person with dementia, but also the effect on me. Because I met other people who were in my situation, it helped me. I had something to look forward to. Next month I will go again. On Sunday we have this wonderful thing again. And it helped me. And I think many people in my situation now care longer at home. They wait quite a while because they know others are doing the same thing. We role model to others. And they say, hey, if you can do it at home, I can do it too. It is so beneficial from many sides.
Yeah, I agree. And when Oliver said, accept the limitations and you're really enhancing the abilities. And so often we tell people, we'll just let it go, accept it. But we're not, but people aren't leading by example. And I think when you lead by example and they can actually physically see and feel the difference, that's when the change happens. But just spewing words at people of this is what you should do when they haven't walked in your shoes, it isn't helpful for most people, because they, how do I apply that? How do I make that happen? You have to like open the door and let them see why that is so important and how it can make their lives easier as well, with that.
That's a very important part of it, the warm welcome. We always, in every project we do, we have, before we start a project, we want them to have a warm welcome. Mm-hmm. And that is so important, specifically for the people who come the first time. Hey, I'm welcome. They see me here. They are not interested in where I live and what I did in life or how much money I have, but they just like me because the person who I am today.
Yeah. Well, I remember just an example with our memory cafe. We would always get the rooms set up and, ready to go. And then one day we sat back and go, we're taking that away from them. They love to get here early and they want to help. And so then we stopped, and that, they loved that. They were part of the whole thing. And sometimes we overprotect without even knowing what it is we're doing, and we take away instead of enhancing their lives and letting them feel that they're part, if it's setting up, if it's taking down, if it's, inclusion during, whatever levels it is. But some of it is just really, really simple little things. And like you said,
It's common sense.
a smile and a welcome. How tough is that? And yet we've all been to things where you don't even feel welcome, let alone a person with dementia. So know the impact that it has.
I think also what Elena is saying is especially important when we look at this kind of projects. Often people are involved, for instance, from a residential care center, or it is located in a residential care center. But often people living at home with dementia, which is like in Belgium, like 70% of the population of the people with dementia, it's often more difficult to involve them structurally because they experience often like shame, isolation, and it's not like a structural offer, like for instance, for like a care home. And that's really like one of the key things in this project that we also want to address, especially like with the whole coronavirus crisis, which also had really like an impact on this project, like also removing the barriers for people living at home and make it much easier to involve them in this kind of project. I think that's not only a challenge in Belgium or in other countries, but across the world. So I think that's really like important. And it's often like Elena is saying, like in small things, like a warm welcome, and then also stimulating them to be involved at the start of the activity. And small things are big changes for people with dementia. I know it sounds like a cliche maybe, but that's the truth. So
very much so.
Yeah. So, and often, as you say, we make it way too complicated. So in that sense,
you know what? Common sense. Stop looking at them as patients. They are ordinary people, just like you and me.
I agree. I'll never forget. One gentleman was saying, and this isn't arts and culture, but this was a business thing, but this is just to the basics of the core of how we treat people. And he was meeting with his financial planner, and he had his wife with him. And the financial planner would not even acknowledge she was there. No eye contact, no hi, Annie, no nothing. And he finally stopped the conversation and said, "I'm firing you." And the guy was shy. He had been with him for years. And he said, "Why?" He's like, "Because you're not respecting my wife. And when you don't respect her, you don't respect me, and you don't deserve my business." And he just got up and left. And it's just those small little things are so impactful. And I was so proud of him for standing up for himself. But he was talking about, my stomach was just getting upset, just sitting there, worried about her, because I knew she could take all of that in, that she wasn't part of the conversation.
They know, they feel it. Their emotions are so strong. They are much stronger than we think.
Now, one of the things, we had talked about was sustainability. Have you found some barriers with that at all, Oliver, with the project?
Well, you have like the obvious barriers like time, organizational structures, and so on and so on. But I think it's more interesting to look more at the micro level, like of the care relation. And there we conducted like focus groups with different people, also with people with dementia, but also with healthcare and cultural professionals. And there often it's like what we talked about like the last minutes. It's often like the attitude of people or like really like the stereotype perspective on people with dementia. That was really like a barrier. So really like more on the one-to-one contact level. And for me, that's really like, I think that's a massive opportunity to move forward in changing the perspective, because I mean, the foundations are there within this project, and it's really like trying to enhance that shift in attitude. And that's what we learned during those digital focus group, that often people need like really like simple communication tools. And we also try to include on the website like communication tips, which for us may sound obvious, but they aren't, because otherwise everybody would be doing it. So I think maybe for the audience, it's more interesting to look at the micro level, for instance, of a care setting, of a museum or whatsoever, and then looking at what we can change in the relationship with people with dementia, apart from the obvious barriers like lack of money or things like that. So I think that's maybe the most interesting of the lessons learned from my personal perspective.
I still find over here in the US that everyone thinks they're collaborative, but they're really not it near as much as they could be. And so even like organizations will hear about something and they'll think it's good, but they don't pass it on because it's not theirs. And what I find is for a lot of these creative projects, the word of mouth from individuals living with dementia is really what makes them sustainable in terms of feeding and getting people in.
Absolutely.
It's not so much the professional line that is there. And to me, that hasn't changed much in 40 years since I was, part of this. And, that's one of the reasons we created Dementia Map, was to try to get those global resources out there so people can search. And I can't remember if you're part of that yet or not, but we would love to have your group listed in there, because we just
not yet. We should move forward on that one. But I just wanted to add to what you were saying, Laurie. I think that's a key point also. It's almost like the marketing, if I can call it that way, of this kind of project. I think it's really important to give like the end users, they're like the tools in hand. Like we wrote like a chapter in the publication on storytelling. And for us, storytelling is really like looking through the perspective of what is the added value for the person with dementia of this or that project. And that's also, again, like a shift. It's not for a professional to say, that's for me like the most important thing. It's for the end user. And I think that's really a shift we still have to make, well, not only in Belgium, but across the globe, like really involving the end users as a quality check, but also in the communication and the marketing of a project. I think that can enhance also the sustainability. At least that's our experience within this project.
At first, I wasn't sure this would be a good match, but on my educational resources page, we have this Dementia and the Arts thing. And I think I'm going to put a link to you guys there, because I think it will inspire some other people to look at things differently. And I think that's so important. It doesn't, like Elena was saying, it doesn't have to be complicated. We really just have to get back to common sense and basics and what's working and what's not. What makes people feel safe? What makes people feel happy? Those aren't tough things to evaluate if we just slow down. But we dive in so much deeper and make it so much more complicated than it needs to be. And I think if we can get more people on board in terms of sharing all these different resources, it makes all of our jobs easier and it makes their lives much better. And we can improve what we're good at instead of trying to do maybe what we're not so good at, but we know it's a good idea and it needs to be out there, instead of really letting people do what they do well, or picking up the phone or having a Zoom conversation with you guys to learn more if that's what they need. Visit a site, look at possibilities instead of, I think so often we look at what's not possible and we have all kinds of excuses to procrastinate.
Right.
Yeah. But I also find that when you do something you're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work, and you get so much joy, out of seeing the impact. But I think especially in today's market, people are so overwhelmed with the amount of work because they have no purpose and they don't feel respected and appreciated and all of those things. You get all that stuff in the industry of dementia if your heart's in the right spot.
And I think just to add on a quick note, Laurie, I mean, lots of lessons learned for us in this project is about finding the balance between different things. I mean, you talked about the safe environment a minute ago. I think, again, yes, that's important, but you have to find a balance between what I call security and well-being. I think the whole coronavirus crisis, that's the biggest lesson of the whole coronavirus crisis, but it's the same for arts and cultural projects. You still have to give people challenges. People with dementia can still learn. They want to discover new things also in the later stages. And then often, like in the care for people with dementia, we tend to rewind the movie all the time, and that's okay, like all the reminiscence activities. But there's a whole other palette of artistic expressions that can still challenge people with dementia. I think again, there you have to find a balance between safe environment, but also challenging people.
Yeah, from the day I started to realize that the culture and music would add something to our lives, I started to enjoy living with dementia. And I'm very active in inviting and involving other people, and they all experience the same. They are so happy that they are involved. And your program, I like it so much, Alzheimer Speaks. It makes people speak again. It gives them a voice again. It is wonderful.
Well, thank you. Well, I think one of the things that is neat about art is it's always, the standard phrase is, art is in the eye of the beholder. There's no right or wrong. And
Right.
yet with everything else in life, there's a right and there's a wrong that we've been taught. And there are standards. And with art, what I have learned through this Dementia in the Arts program that I do is some people haven't done, they weren't artistic at all. And they just got involved with it. And
Right.
Some of their work's just magnificent. I mean, like to the point it should be commissioned. But I think part of it is with dementia, they get to the point of the ego has left the building and they just really don't care what someone,
Right.
they're living in the moment and they're going to find joy. They're going to find peace. And they really have learned how comforting that can be when they're in that moment and they just, dive in. But it is absolutely incredible. And it makes me sad for, like, my daughter was an activities director, and she was told, well, you can't put their artwork up, because it's not professional.
Oh, no.
You will spend thousands of dollars on commissioned work instead of highlighting what your people do. And you could even buy different frames where things could be, if you wanted it to look fancier, and switch things out. But it was like, oh no, that doesn't look good. And it's like, oh my gosh. But so much of what happens, I think, in the world of dementia is we don't explain the whys. Why are we doing these things, behind? And that just makes such a huge difference if we educate people on the whys, that this is powerful and this was done by such and such, and take them down a different path, one of hope and comfort and joy.
One of the things in our project was where they made art, and the uglier the result, the nicer the frame was. So if the work wasn't that nice, they put it in an exclusive frame, so it still looked nice.
Oh, I know that. I took my daughter to we went and painted one day, and we were struggling in our relationship. She was a teenager, and she's like, I don't want to go. And I'm like, we're going. And we both painted, and I put them in frames. They are like the dearest thing to my heart, and they look magnificent. I mean, but on their own, they look okay. But in the frames, they really, really, they really
so proud of it.
Yeah. So I just think we need so much more of this. What haven't we covered, Oliver, that we should?
Well, I think we covered a lot. I was thinking we talked about the project output in the meantime as well, I guess. So obviously we're curious to know what other people across the globe find of the projects that we develop, because maybe we didn't talk about maybe the cultural specificness of some projects, but I think, again, that's an interesting thing to take into account. What works in Spain will work probably totally different in your area in the USA, but again, that's like one of the things we try to enhance with this kind of project, like also the intercultural learning points, if that makes sense, and also maybe in the future expanding it also to other areas which are maybe which have less financial capacities, because now the project, obviously, it requires some resources, and I think we have to stay critical. And when we talk about transferability, I think there's still some work to do about making them gradual, also adaptable to other cultures and areas around the globe. But for us, that's obviously work in progress, but we're curious to hear always on the feedback. So maybe it's interesting also to share the link to our YouTube channel People can find all the videos there, and we welcome, obviously, all the feedback also from your audience.
Now, I have two websites for you. I have the Dementia Cultural Mediation, but then there's another one. I don't know how you even pronounce it.
This is our Flemish website that I sent. It's dementie.be. But maybe we can alter that link to the YouTube page, because that's really tailored to the international audience, and this will be more relevant.
And then we've got a LinkedIn contact, a Facebook, and a Twitter for you. And then Elena, is there information that you would like to give people for contact information, or just go through Oliver?
Yes, but I'll go through Oliver. But Oliver probably didn't say that at the end, every country was responsible for organizing a day, or in Denmark, they even did 2 days, where we presented the things we did for a larger audience.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Exchange of the good practices. Yeah, it was actually called Learning, Teaching, and Training. And as I told during the item on the project journey, most of them were online, but luckily we had the chance to meet for one learning, teaching, and training in the city of Groningen in the Netherlands. And then you really, you have to experience it. So that was really like a benefit for us to experience it for once live, but the other were like online through webinars due to the coronavirus. But it's interesting that Elena points it out once again, because these learning, teaching, and trainings actually were like the basics to develop like the project sheets that I talked about earlier. And we try to also not only look at like, well, what are the opportunities of a project, but what can be made better on different levels. So again, these lessons learned were also like the basis for the learning, teaching, and training. That
I was really strict at that. I was from the very beginning. I listened and looked if they used respectful language all the time, and consequently, because sometimes that people forget that you have to be respectful in everything you do, in your attitude, in all the words you choose, in everything you write. And that's what I always say to my students: do normal, behave normal, and show respect. And that's what we should do with dementia.
Exactly.
Don't look down on them, but treat them with respect as they deserve. And then, of course, we also, sometimes it wasn't even tried, they developed it and they presented it. But some things are really well tested. And of course, I like that. There's one thing, the shared reading. I think it's applicable in every country. It's fantastic.
Elena, do you want to give a plug for your book too?
Oh, no, it's not about it today.
Well, it's just another resource for people to be able to have.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Yeah, well, my cousin she's from Escondido, California, and she cares for her mom and I for my husband. And when we met in 10th, we discovered that our care was the same. We always say everything is different, but it was all the same. But it was for her mom. And then there was a lady from Japan, and she said, in Japan, it's the same. So we made a book, Courage for the Caregivers, and it's still available.
Wonderful. I love the work that you guys have done. I think it's just absolutely incredible, and that you've made it so shareable. I mean, with that thought in mind, where a lot of times people don't think about the importance of the shareability. And I think that is really critical to shift our dementia care culture.
And we just we don't only share, but we actively encourage and invite people to come and participate.
Well, thank you both for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. To our listeners, I hope you like, click, and share this. This was a really important conversation with some, I think, brilliant insights that can help us all in terms of looking at dementia differently, and being inclusive, realizing our culture and our cultural activities are so important to living well, and we can all make a difference there. So thank you, everyone.
And I'd like to thank you on behalf of all the project partners, Laurie, for the the fascinating journey we traveled together with all the project partners during the 2.5 years. And I just like to end like with with a baseline that's really important for us in Flanders. We have an awareness raising campaign, and when I translate it, it's called Forget Dementia, Remember the Person, and really like seeing that person behind the dementia. That's really like the key aim of this project, and I hope we can also move forward on that in the future.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be a diagnosis. I don't care what it is you have. And so it shouldn't be any different with dementia. We do need to remove those stigmas and get back to just our human connections and our relationships. So thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now, this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.